Hello and welcome. In the chat box, please introduce yourself and share one random fun fact about yourself. We will begin shortly. This is the third webinar in our series dedicated to new teachers. The topic we will explore today is IIEP tips and tricks. My name is Sarah Moore. I am a special education specialist at the Indiana Department of Education. Prior to joining the staff at IDOE, I taught first grade and special education for many years. Some of my responsibilities as a specialist include monitoring Indicator 11, the 1% cap on alternate assessment, and supporting students with the most significant disabilities. Today, in this virtual space, we want everyone's thoughts, questions, and ideas to be heard. To accommodate these needs, we will be utilizing the chat box to pose polling questions and for you as participants to ask questions. Please answer the following question in the chat box. What is your level of awareness of the Indiana IEP system? Would you consider yourself an expert? Are you comfortable navigating IIEP, or are you a novice? We will take a few minutes to make sure everyone has a chance to answer before we proceed. The foundation of the IEP is to provide equitable access to all students with disabilities. You can see in this graphic developed by IDOE those core values and components. Collaboration, instruction, curriculum, and assessment all play important roles in student success. Paired with a strong foundation based in universal design for learning and multi-tiered system of supports, educators are able to have shared accountability, responsibility, and high expectations of all students. In this slide, you will see the different stages of the IEP process, from the initial referral through implementation. Please take a couple of minutes and share in the chat box your role in this process. Are you the special education teacher? Director? How do you fit into this picture? The starting point of the IEP begins after an educational evaluation has taken place and a determination for eligibility has been made. Per Article 7, there are 13 different eligibility categories. As stated in Article 7, to the maximum extent appropriate, students with disabilities are educated with non-disabled students. You can see here the 8 main components of the IEP. Present levels of performance details how the student is doing academically at the present moment. In addition to academic concerns, the PLOP looks at a child's current physical condition, including the status of any disabilities and mobility status, and social relationships with adults and other children, to the developmental skills of which will be needed for independence. Review or determine eligibility. Make sure that this is filled out with the appropriate eligibility category that was discussed during the conference. When looking at special considerations and behavior concerns, provide a description of the behavior of concern. Describe what an observer would see when the behavior occurs. What does it look like? Where does the behavior happen? Where does the behavior not happen? Special considerations along with behavior would be blindness or visual impairment, communication needs, deafness, limited English proficiency, and assistive technology. Beginning when the child is 14 or younger if appropriate, the IEP must address, within the applicable parts of the IEP, the courses he or she needs to take to reach his or her post-school goals. A statement of transition services needs must also be included in each of the child's subsequent IEPs. Beginning when the child is age 16 or younger if appropriate, the IEP must state what transition services are needed to help the child prepare for leaving school. Next, you need to detail if the child participates in the general assessment and how. If he or she does not participate, why not, and what alternate assessment will be used instead? This is also where you will enter the accommodations unique to each student. Annual goals are goals that the child can reasonably accomplish in a year. The goals are broken down into short-term objectives or benchmarks. Goals may be academic, address social or behavioral needs, relate to physical needs, or address other educational needs. The goals must be measurable, meaning that it must be possible to measure whether the student has achieved the goals. The IEP must also list the special education and related services to be provided to the child or on behalf of the child. This includes supplementary aids and services that the child needs. It also includes modifications or changes to the program or supports for school personnel, such as training or professional development that will be provided to assist the child. In addition, the child's placement, or where the IEP will be carried out, must be decided. The placement decision is made by a group of people, including the parents and others who know about the child, what the evaluation results mean, and what type of placements are appropriate. General education teachers play an important role in the case conference. They're able to discuss how the student's disability affects his access to and progress in the curriculum, and share what strategies work or did not work for the student. This opens up discussion about how special education can better support the student in the general education classroom. These guided questions are useful to make sure the general education and special education teacher are able to share and give the information needed to best support the student, regardless of the setting. A general education teacher must be in attendance or excused with prior written parental consent. They must input more than just test scores and grades. What teaching strategies worked best for this student is also a question that needs to be addressed. An accommodation changes how a student learns the material. A modification changes what a student is taught or expected to learn. An accommodation is generally thought of as a change in the course, standard, test preparation, location, timing, scheduling, expectations, student response, and/or other attributes which provide access for a student with a disability to participate in a course, standard, or test. It does not fundamentally alter or lower the expectation of the course or test. A modification is a change in the course, standard, test preparation, location, timing, scheduling, expectations, student response, and/or other attribute which provide access for a student with a disability to participate in a course, standard, or test, which does fundamentally alter or lower the standard or expectation of the course, standard, or test. Specifically designed instruction. SDI can happen in any location. SDI can be provided by a special education teacher. SDI can be provided by a general education teacher in collaboration with a special education teacher. and SDI is required if the student has an IEP. So specially designed instruction defined is specially designed instruction means adapting as appropriate to the needs of a student who is eligible for special education and related services, the content, methodology, or delivery of instruction to 1. Address the unique needs of the student that result from the student's disability, and 2. Ensure the student's access to the general curriculum so that the student can meet the educational standards within the jurisdiction of the public agency that apply to all students. Does the SDI item relate directly to assessment information on the student? It should. Can another adult read the SDI item and have a reasonable idea of what to do with a student? Is it descriptive enough? Does it provide options to the implementer? Does the SDI item include brand names? There should be no mention of brand name approaches in the IEP. The needs of the student should be translated into specially designed instruction statements. Does the SDI item actually involve instruction and teaching? It should. It should not simply be a listing of generic items such as class placement, additional testing, teacher aid, or wraparound aid. Does the SDI item define who is going to implement it and how often a day or week it will be implemented? Otherwise, how do we know who is doing what and who we need to hold accountable for implementation? Does the SDI section include day-to-day testing items? It should. Is it possible to measure the effectiveness of the SDI item? It should be possible to determine effectiveness. As needed is never used. Requested by student is never used. Supplementary aids and services means aids, services, and other supports that are provided in regular education classes, other education-related settings, and in extracurricular and non-academic settings to enable children with disabilities to be educated with non-disabled children to the maximum extent appropriate. Visual prompts, calming strategies, and graphic organizers are a few examples of supplementary aids and services. Has the student made the progress we expected? If so, how do we continue if needed? If not, what must be changed in order to improve student outcomes? The following items must be updated and reviewed annually: present levels, behavior plan, transition goals, annual goals, services, and placement. The following items should be updated and reviewed when a meeting takes place. Document any contributions that the parents made to the discussion. Update goals, services, and placement discussed during the meeting. If a reevaluation is taking place, then consider the possible changes in eligibility and record those. Finally, add conference notes to document any changes made to the IEP. Goal requirements. If a goal is not measurable, it violates the IDEA and may result in the denial of FAPE. If a goal is not measured, that violates the IDEA and may result in the denial of FAPE. Post-secondary goals must be in place for students 14 or older. Goals must include objectives or benchmarks if the student participates in an alternate assessment. Additional requirements include Evaluators can independently agree when a goal is achieved. The goal describes expected student growth over the span of the IEP. The three components of a measurable goal are as follows. 1. Target behavior. 2. Stimulus material or conditions. And 3. Criterion for acceptable performance. Target behavior is based on specific access skills that have been found to be learning barriers for the students. It must be observable, measurable, verifiable, and repeatable, not invisible or open to interpretations. Now I will share some resources from Project Success. This is a great opportunity to watch and learn. Project Success walks educators through the process of writing an IEP goal aligned to a grade level content connector. This webinar discusses best practices for the IEP process, as well as the steps for writing measurable IEP goals. Easy to implement tools and resources are shared throughout the webinar, as well as examples. The webinar was prepared and delivered during the 2020 school year. To monitor student progress, IEP teams must make decisions about the nature of the data that will be collected and analyzed relevant to each annual goal. The most appropriate progress monitoring systems are those in which objective numerical data are collected frequently, graphed, analyzed, and then used to make instructional decisions. Anecdotal data and other subjective procedures are not appropriate for monitoring student progress and should not be the basis of a program monitoring system. What is the best method to collect the information necessary to monitor the goal you have written? Is there anything already developed that is usable, or will you have to create the measure or observe the student yourself? What happens next? Evaluation of the IEP's effectiveness, intervene if necessary, and report findings to all interested parties. The answer to these 4 questions should be clear at the conclusion of the case conference. The student's disability and how it impacts his or her learning. What accommodations the student will require, what modifications, if any, the student will require, and what services they will receive and when they will occur. The Indiana IEP Resource Center, or IEPRC, is part of the Indiana Resource Network. Here you can see a brief overview of services that they provide, contact information, and a link to their website. Resources on their website can be found under the Learning Center tab, and they have recently added Padlet resources on an array of topics related to special education, student groups, and even COVID-19. You can also find resources for facilitated IEPs on their website. Facilitated IEP services are available for both face-to-face and virtual settings. Services are at no cost to schools. Next, we will discuss the criteria for determining eligibility. This is a screenshot of the criteria for determining eligibility to participate in an alternate assessment found in the Indiana IEP system. The case conference committee must discuss the 4 criteria questions. If yes is selected for all of them, they acknowledge the student has a significant intellectual disability and is eligible to participate in the alternate assessment. If yes cannot be selected for all 4 criteria, this student does not qualify for participation in the alternate assessment. Please note that the majority of students, when provided appropriate services and supports, should receive appropriate instruction on grade level standards and take iLearn or iStep Plus. Karen Davies, the Accessibility and Accommodation Specialist with the Office of Special Education, shared some of her recommendations for ensuring testing accommodations are noted correctly in the Test Information Distribution Engine, or TIDE. Remember that TIDE is Cambium's system for housing all student information, including accommodations. This information is pulled directly from Indiana IEP. Let's start with selecting daily accommodations. Remember that accommodations selected are based on discussion of the student's present levels of academic achievement and functional performance. Accommodations should be available during the entire school day as decided by the CCC. When you are selecting state assessment accommodations, remember the following. Educators should match the daily accommodations to the extent allowed on the assessment. Educators should refer to the 2020-2021 Accessibility and Accommodations Guidance to see which accommodations are allowed on the assessment and which might most benefit students. Educators can also watch the 2020-2021 accommodations training for more information on testing accommodations. The Office of Student Assessment receives a lot of questions about testing accommodations. Remember that TIDE only pulls these accommodations from finalized IEPs. Before you reach out to the Office of Student Assessment, make sure the IEP is accepted and finalized. If the IEP is in the proposed state, to confirm in iIEP, select Student History, then select the dark green IEP to locate accommodations. Remember, you can access TIDE now. You'll definitely want to ensure your students are noted in TIDE as alternate testers and their accommodations are correct before the testing window opens on April 5th. If you have any additional questions that are specific to accommodations for IM, please contact Karen Davies. Her contact information is included on this slide. You can find this page on the IDOE website. You will be able to access all of the following EARNs by clicking on their logo. This is just a list of additional resources that you may find useful throughout the year. Thank you for joining this afternoon. I hope you have found this information useful. If you have any questions at this time, please put them in the chat box. And thanks again.